My name is Beth Brown, and I am bringing this program to you from our Duncan Falls Branch Library location. Kathy Kirkbride, our wonderful Duncan Falls manager, asked if I'd be interested in doing a program. And of course I said yes, I'd be happy to do one. And when I was trying to come up with a program idea, I thought I would do one on tea. I grew up drinking tea from the time I was about 6 years old, and my grandmother introduced me to tea. We would go to Navarre, Ohio, where my grandparents lived, which is the home of Nichols Bakery. Yummy smelling in the morning when you wake up. But my grandmother always had tea every morning. And one morning while we were visiting, I became very curious, as children are, and I asked if I could try some tea. Well, grandmother was elated that I would want to try some. So she fixed me this wonderful cup of tea with homemade cream. And I was hooked. From then on, I have enjoyed tea. And in preparing for this program, I did some research and looked up some things using our library resources, a lot of books, and I learned a lot more about tea. So I'm going to talk about tea and the history, how to harvest, and how teas have come into being herbal teas now. One of the things I discovered when looking up about teas is there is something called a blooming tea, which I thought, a blooming tea, that's pretty cool. Well, we bought this blooming tea and thought we'd try it, and it was pretty neat the way it works. So we're going to share that today also. So let me tell you a little bit about blooming teas. This blooming tea came with a beautiful glass little teapot and a lid. This little device here is if you would use loose teas in here, which we are not going to do. We are going to use a blooming tea. Blooming teas come in a packet like this, airtight. And when you open the blooming tea, it just looks like this. It's just a ball. How would they make a blooming tea out of this? Well, we're going to discover and find out. So we're going to place our blooming ball tea down in the teapot, and then we pour over boiling water. This will need to steep about 3 to 5 minutes, so it should be ready after our presentation. Let's see what happens. We'll fill this teapot up, we'll say about 3/4 full. See what happens. That should do it. We'll put the lid on, and we are going to let this steep, and we'll see what happens. We'll just put this teapot aside for now. I can't wait to see this blooming tea. I don't know if you can see this picture, but it looks beautiful. There are herbs and yellow flowers and a pink flower that should come out of this. We'll soon see. So let's get started with our presentation. Understanding the magic of tea. Tea has been around for a long time, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's get started. I'm going to share some tea facts. Many of these I didn't realize until I started researching. Tea is the second most consumed beverage after water. That surprised me. I would have thought coffee, but no, it is tea. Listen to this, because I'm going to contradict myself a little bit later on when we talk about herbal teas. All tea comes from the tropical plant known as Camellia sinensis. This is what it looks like. Tea is good for you. It contains polyphenols, which are antioxidants that repair cells, and in doing so, may help our bodies fend off cardiovascular disease, cancers, osteoporosis, diabetes, and other maladies. And contrary to popular belief, it's not just green tea that's good for you. Black, white, and red tea also have health-giving flavonoids and polyphenols. This really surprised me. It takes around 2,000 tiny leaves to make just 1 pound of finished tea. Tea plants grow in the wilds in parts of Asia, but can also be farmed. The very best tea comes from high elevations and is hand-picked. You can see here, this is a tea field in India. And this is just one person out there right now harvesting tea leaves by hand. Some tea grows in the United States. There is an island tea plantation off the coast of South Carolina and also in Hawaii. Most tea, though, is grown in India and China. You are less likely to get a caffeine crash when you drink tea as opposed to soda or coffee. A caffeine crash is if you've ever drinking a lot of tea or coffee or different things and you kind of get a little pick-me-up. Sometimes if you drink too much caffeine, when you start coming back down, you just don't feel so good. But with tea, your caffeine crash is going to be a little bit less. Why? The high levels of antioxidants in tea slow the absorption of caffeine, which results in a gentler increase of caffeine in your system and a longer period of alertness with no crash at the end. Here is another fact about iced tea. Americans tasted their first iced tea at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. Genuine Darjeeling tea is grown in an area of India at the foot of the Himalayas that's less than 70 square miles large. For this reason, Darjeeling is highly prized and known as the champagne of teas. Do you store your tea near your coffee or in a spice cabinet? Don't do it. Store your tea away from strong competing aromas so that you keep the tea's own delicate flavors intact. How's our blooming tea coming? Oh, it's starting to open up. Let's continue. The history of tea. The history of tea dates back to ancient China almost 5,000 years ago. According to legend, in 2732 BC, Emperor Shen Nung, here's a picture of him, discovered tea when leaves from a wild tree blew into his pot of boiling water. He was immediately interested in the pleasant scent of the resulting brew, and he drank some. Legend says the emperor described a warm feeling as he drank the intriguing brew, as if the liquid was investigating every part of his body. The popularity of tea in China continued to grow rapidly from the 4th through the 8th century. The Chinese Empire tightly controlled the preparation and cultivation of the crop. It was even specified that only young women, presumably because of their purity, were to handle the tea leaves only. These young female handlers were not to eat garlic, onions, or strong spices, in case the odor on their fingertips might contaminate the precious tea leaves. Harvesting of tea. First, excess moisture is removed from the tea leaves after they are picked from the fields. This process is called withering. The leaves are laid out on a wire mesh and left to dry for 18 to 20 hours. This is the easiest method, or natural withering. And here you can see a picture of all kinds of tea leaves that are being laid out to wither. Withered tea is placed in a roller drum and is continuously pressed and rotated to release catechin compounds and enzymes that later will give tea its unique flavor. The tea is then crushed and sifted to ventilate and cool. Then comes one of the most important steps called fermentation. Tea is laid out on tables or grids in the area with controlled temperature and oxygen supply. This process forms flavor and the aroma of tea. Tea auctions. This was another fact I had no idea about. Dry tea is then sorted on vibrating sieves that have meshes of different diameters that separate tea leaves of uniform shape and size. Then, tea is packed and sent to tea auctions. There are around 10 major tea auctions in the world. The largest are in Cochin and Calcutta, India, Colombo, Sri Lanka, Jakarta, Indonesia, Bombayja, Kenya, and Chittagong, Bangladesh. And here you can see different countries are coming to these tea auctions, and it's quite the process of looking at the teas, tasting the teas, and then buying the teas. Tea versus herbal tea. When I first started talking to you, I said, listen to what I say about all tea. Herbal teas are not made with the tea leaf, which that kind of surprised me too, but let's listen. Herbal teas have never been so popular, with tea drinkers increasingly switching to herbs when looking to reduce their caffeine intake, as well as taking advantage of their endless health benefits. Unlike all other tea types, such as black, oolong, green, and white, herbal teas do not actually come from the tea plant Camellia sinensis. In fact, strictly speaking, herbs shouldn't really be called teas at all, but rather infusions or tisanes, as they all come from different plants, each one distinct in how and where they grow, as well as their flavor and properties. A herbal tea is therefore simply an infusion of a particular herb in hot water, which not only facilitates its consumption, but also helps release some of the helpful essential oils. Types of herbal tea. While doing research for this program, I started looking up all kinds of different ways to make infusions or herbal teas. And I discovered that daylilies, which, who would have known this beautiful daylily, can be turned into an herbal tea. I also found out that mint, which is pretty popular, can be turned into teas. As a matter of fact, my favorite way to enjoy mint is to make iced tea with mint leaves in it, and then I sweeten it with a little bit of honey. Do you know what this is called? This is called bee balm or monarda. This can also be turned into an herbal tea. Can you see this? It is a passion flower. Now this beautiful flower, I thought, I bet that could be made into a tea. But I was really wrong. Do not use passion flowers themselves in an herbal tea. You would want to wait until it's turned into a fruit, and the fruit can then be used into an herbal tea. So one of the things when you are looking around your yard or going out and thinking of making your own herbal tea, do your research, because not Every flower can be used as an herbal tea. As a matter of fact, some could be very dangerous. So get a book from the library, perhaps Mastering Recipes of Herbal Remedies, and make sure you do your homework. This really surprised me. I don't know if you know what this is. This is oregano, and it has a pretty pungent smell, often used in like pasta sauces or Italian cooking. But you can use this also as an herbal tea. And one more that I brought. Do you know what this is? This is called hibiscus. Hibiscus can be turned into an herbal tea. Some other herbal teas are green tea, dried ginger. That would be really good, especially if you have motion sickness or are feeling nauseated. Make some ginger tea. Lemon balm, that can be turned into a wonderful herbal tea. Red clover. I imagine many of you have heard about dandelion tea. Dandelion, the whole plant from the flower to the leaves to the roots, can be used in an herbal tea. Yerba mate, have you ever heard of that? That's becoming more and more popular. And here is an example of you can buy yerba mate tea like this too. Chamomile. Chamomile is really nice to kind of unwind. It's a great herbal tea to have before going to bed at night. And as you all know, there are so many different kinds of teas that you see in the store. Go ahead and try some different ones and see what you like. Maybe it can be something new that you're trying. When it comes to tea, there are all kinds of teapots. Here is one. And all kinds of teacups. There are many people who like to collect them. I have a friend who has a beautiful collection of teapots, and whenever their family goes traveling, they always try to bring back a teapot from where they traveled. As you can see, there are so many different beautiful types. I myself have a favorite mug that I use. I just make my tea in a mug like this. Tea can also be bought in loose form. So all of these are tea bags that you have. But you can also buy loose leaf tea, and you can infuse it into your teacup. So some of the ways you can infuse, this is a tea ball. You can just buy this and you put your loose tea in here, close it, and then just let it steep in your teacup like that. Another variety of a way to use loose tea is to just have a little mesh sieve like this. Put your teas in here and put it down in your water. Let it steep 3 to 5 minutes or so. How's our blooming tea coming? Ooh, now that's looking nice. Let's keep going. We'll give this a little more time. A poem for tea. When the world is at odds and the mind is at sea, then cease the useless tedium and brew a cup of tea. There is a magic in its fragrance, there is solace in its taste, and the laden moments vanish somehow into space. The world becomes a lovely thing. There's beauty as you'll see, all because you briefly stopped to brew a cup of tea. Okay, let's take a real closer look at this blooming tea. Oh my goodness. Can you see how the water has turned a brownish color from the herbs coming out? Oh my goodness. Oh, that smells wonderful. It's kind of very sweet smell to it. And if I get close enough, can you see the blooming tea in there? That is just beautiful. You know, if you come to the Duncan Falls Branch Library, you will be able to see this. We'll have this up, and we've got some other blooming teas that we can put out for you to see. So stop in next week and see us and look at some of these blooming teas we have. This blooming tea, this was something else I didn't realize that I thought was very interesting. When all of this tea infusion has been consumed after we drink it, this blooming tea can be dried and reused again about 3 or 4 times. So if you want to have a fun activity, you can purchase some blooming tea. You can buy just the blooming tea itself, or you can buy the whole pot yourself. But I would encourage you to try teas if you haven't, or if you do enjoy tea, if you would try something new, branch out, explore different things. That's the best way to enjoy tea. So we really thank you for joining us today for the program on the magic of tea. There are many great resources at our library, so come on down and learn more about herbal teas and try something new. Thank you for your time, and you all take care.